Hardened Scales, and that card, yep, you guessed it, I can only assume because I think highly of you, is Oath of Ajani. Oath of Ajani is a, wait for it, legendary enchantment that costs 1 green and 1 white and reads, when Oath of Ajani enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Planeswalker spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. This is going to lower the curve and also make Hardened Scales more efficient, simultaneously making the deck one of the toughest to answer. Another aggro deck for Frontier, Hardened Scales uses, you guessed it, Hardened Scales, with cards like Den Protector, Mana Gorger Hydra, Avatar of the Resolute, and Servant of the Scale to create another fast, efficient aggro deck for Frontier. Oath of Ajani will likely replace Verdant Gearhulk in the list, and thus creating an extremely low curve. You're going to have to be fast to outlast this. All right, card number 3 on our list is not aggro, but it is going to show aggro and even combo just what blue can do, and you knew what blue could do. It was say no. I disallow it. Disallow is a mono blue card for 1 mana of any color, and 2 blue for an instant that reads counter target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. Snap! This may not be OG counter spell, but it is tough enough stuff. Why? Because it gives control decks a much better alternative to Silumgar's Scorn, and can even let them now interact with resolved combo pieces such as Aetherworks Marvel and Saheeli. Hey, worst case scenario, it stifles a fetch land. Coming in at number 2 on our list is a card that will bring us back into aggro. I know, settle down, settle down. It is quite possibly the best 1-drop since Wild Nactil, and that of course is Narnam Renegade. Narnam Renegade is a 1/2 death touch for 1 green mana with Revolt, meaning it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn. Also a potential card for Modern, Narnam is indeed evocative of Wild Nactil, and is easily a turn 1 drop if you have started with a fetch land, which, well, why wouldn't you? This fits easily into existing aggro decks like Hardened Scales, Elves, and Atarka Red, and even opens up wild possibilities like Rule Landfall and Golgari aggro builds. And the number 1 card for Frontier from Aether Revolt, it's no contest. Nothing even comes close. In fact, I would stake my entire career as an adjunct professor at a community college on it having a huge impact on the format. That card, it's having an impact on other formats. You guessed it, Fatal Push. Fatal Push. Most players are calling this the best removal spell since Dismember, and others are even going back as far as Swords to Plowshares itself. This will see play in every constructed format it is legal in, and expect it to be the number 1 card on most people's lists for Standard, for Modern, heck, even some Legacy lists after Aether Revolt. For Frontier, it offers optimal removal and incredible tempo. Hey, it can kill a Siege Rhino for 1 mana, and that is nothing short of spectacular. I hope very much this video has been of some help to you. You can help me out by remembering to like, share, subscribe, or just by leaving a message. What cards from Aether Revolt do you think will have the biggest impact on the Frontier format? Let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in learning more about the new Magic the Gathering format Frontier, there's a lot of great places to go. One of my favorites that I'd recommend is www.mtgfrontier.com for everything from strategy articles to deck lists. mtgfrontier.com. And this video has been brought to you in part by a sponsorship from Card Kingdom, as well as the Patreon support of viewers like you. So thank you.
What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from SBMTG on the YouTube.com. Down there, we like magic. You gotta know by now. And we are all still reeling from these standard bannings. We're like, what do we do? And some people are like, yay! And some people are like, my money! But we still, hey Julie, we still gotta figure out exactly what to do with this standard format, which we're going to be in like 2 weeks. So, and there's actually still an FNM, one FNM for Kaladesh Standard, so there's that too. But we got to figure out what this format is before we start it, right? So, in this video, I'm just going to go over sort of where I think we could possibly go from here. What do I think could be some good decks in this format? How do we start brewing? What do we do? So, here's some ideas. Well, from everything I've seen in the last week or so, I'm probably going to get some dislikes just for talking about this deck. But I haven't talked about it yet, and everyone wants to know what I feel about this combo. I've got emails and comments like, Deb, you got to talk about this combo. So I guess I'll. The number one deck that I'm pretty sure a lot of people are working on right now is Standard Twin, Copycat, the Felidar Guardian Saheeli Rai combo. Just in case you've been under a rock and you just haven't heard about this combo yet for whatever reason, even though it's all anyone's been talking about before and after the bans, for that matter. Here's how it works, just the basics of this combo. Basically, Saheeli Rai can create a copy of Felidar Guardian. When that copy comes into play, it can blink Saheeli Rai. When she comes back into play, according to the rules, she's a fresh Planeswalker that hasn't used any loyalty abilities yet. So, you can -2 her, copy the Guardian again, then the Guardian copy will come into play, and it'll blink Saheeli Rai again. You can do this infinitely, just over and over and over, and get a bunch of 1-power hasters. So you can just swing with infinite 1-power haste guys and end up winning the game. That's how it's supposed to work. And there's a few different intricacies to the combo. For instance, you can play it on 6th turn, even if you have neither piece out. You know, you'll play Felidar Guardian, you'll blink a land, it'll come back into play untapped, and then you can play Saheeli Rai and go from there. Well, the fact that this combo can be played on turn 4 and it's only 2 cards has really turned a lot of heads. Needless to say, this is a lot of what people have been talking about as far as the upcoming standard for like the past week since Guardian got spoiled. And it is pretty powerful. Turn 4 infinite haste guys to finish the game off. It seems pretty good. It seems pretty good to me. And this can be done without any of the cards that were banned, although this gives a little bit more context to why Reflector Mage was banned. You know, Reflector Mage could come down and block for Saheeli and return a creature to the opponent's hands for 2 turns, which would also help protect Saheeli. So now without Reflector Mage, we don't have what would have been a pretty good play for this deck as far as protecting its Planeswalker, which is one of the most important things to the deck. Well, if this seems too good to be true and you kind of don't want it in your standard, then I've got some good and bad news for you. Bad news is it totally works, and it's going to be a real thing, and people are going to try to play it. That sucks. But the good thing, or, you know, that might be awesome. You might love this combo. But the good thing is that the combo is fairly disruptible by instant speed removal and counter magic. First of all, Disallow can pretty easily take care of this. Negate can counter Saheeli, that's a thing, and this combo, if it really is a big thing in Standard, might make Revolutionary Rebuff finally really seriously main deck playable. As far as instant speed removal goes, there's Shock. A lot of people have talked about that. Shock is as a response to her ability. So just instant speed removal against Felidar Guardian will also disrupt the combo. So you've got a Revolted Fatal Push. You've got a Harness Lightning that's got an extra energy behind it. You got Grasp of Darkness. You got Stasis Snare. So there's plenty of actual instant speed ways to take care of this combo. Number one thing to remember about this deck, even if you're packing all the counter spells and instant speed removal necessary to stop it, is to not tap out against it. Do not tap out against this deck on turns, 3 through 7 or whatever. Always leave some mana up either to counter a spell or remove a creature depending on what colors you're in. But there are some ways that this deck could counter the counters. It can always run either main deck or sideboard dispels. Definitely gotta look out for that because if a combo just waits a turn and decides to protect itself with a dispel, then really not a whole lot you can do against that. So that could end up being an issue. Of course, unless you're a control player and you leave up mana for both Void Shatter or Dispel and a Dispel of your own, or maybe Unheal or something, like, this gets pretty meta, but it's probably going to have to. I really, really would hope that this deck is just a glass hand. It doesn't last more than a few weeks. But then about Aetherworks only got better with age. It's like wine, Hopefully, this deck is like cheese, and with time, it molds and no one plays it. Again, if you're really excited about playing this deck, and I should be, I'm the kind of guy that really, really loves ridiculous infinite combos, but the fact that this is only 2 cards and it comes down as early as turn 4 is fairly oppressive. It's kind of oppressive. Like, if you ban Emrakul so that Marvel can't go off on turn 4, then why have this turn 4 combo? And people are like, maybe Wizards missed it. No, Wizards, I really don't think Wizards would have missed something as easy to notice and as big as this. I feel like this is completely purposeful, but they've introduced a fair amount of controls to deal with this, hopefully. The other question with this deck is, what's the shell that you build around it? Well, I would imagine that maybe a Jeskai control shell, one that keeps creatures off of the board in the early game so that your Saheeli is more protected, you know. And maybe one that also runs some counter spells since you're in that color already, and you want to be able to protect your combo and keep things off the board. So I could see this being in sort of a Jeskai control, or even a Jeskai mid-range shell that plays counter spells and maybe some planeswalkers or something. But I'm leaning more towards a Jeskai control deck. Another cool thing about this deck, before I go on to another deck here, is it's got actually another infinite combo in it. Possibly, if it chooses to play this thing, whose name I've forgotten. How professional of me, right? I'm sorry about that. But this thing on your screen right now combos infinitely with Wandering Fumarole. You can basically give it +1/+1 till end of turn infinite times. You just switch the power and toughness on Wandering Fumarole. So there's that. So it's got another +1/+1, or another infinite combo available to it in those very same colors that it could also play to easily win. So a lot of good stuff about this deck. I'm not sure that it'll actually end up playing this infinite combo. Certainly attempts to do standard, but whether or not it makes it until the Pro Tour or does any work at the Pro Tour may really determine its status in this standard. So I'd wait a couple of weeks to determine whether or not this deck is oppressive enough to be real, but it's entirely possible that a 2-card combo that wins on turn 4 is very real. But what are some other decks that we can play in this format now that some cards are banned? We can't play those decks anymore. Well, a lot of these are going to actually be responses to the Saheeli Ride combo deck, or at least they will be in the colors that have responses to said deck. So let's start with a deck that seems like it probably won't be a thing because Smuggler's Copter got banned, but still has a lot of good options at its disposal, and that is Mardu Vehicles. Now, the reason I'm a little stoked on Mardu Vehicles, even though it lost its absolute best piece, Smuggler's Copter, is because it's still in the colors that can really, really deal with the Saheeli Ride combo. I know it's not backing blue, although some of the Mardu Vehicles decks do play blue because projections, that might turn into something else outside of the game or something. So this deck can still be full color. But it will do one of two things. It will stay a Mardu Vehicles deck that just plays a little bit more removal. It may add Shock to deal with Saheeli Ride. It may add Fatal Push. It may add Grasp of Darkness or Anguished Unmaking or Unlicensed Disintegration.
Have a decently productive conversation, one way, unfortunately, about marijuana and relationships. Both my wife and I have been in relationships in the past where we were against marijuana use and they were pro marijuana use. Where they would smoke pot, we would get upset by it. And in many situations, we would break up with the other individuals. And a lot of you may think, you know, what's wrong with pot? Pot's not a big deal. That's what a lot of people say, and in many ways that's true. Pot, from multiple perspectives, could be accurately perceived as pretty harmless. This depends on the scenarios, the legalities, etc. But to focus on that is missing the point. If someone says in a relationship that I don't want you to ride a certain brand of bikes anymore, or I don't want you to drink a certain kind of juice anymore, because from my perspective, it harms our relationship for some reason, or it does something else that's destructive, whether it be towards their feelings, their finances, whatever. If someone says this, you're probably not going to care, especially if your relationship is on the line. If I'm supposed to give up a certain brand of something because it's too expensive for us to afford, or because it hurts my significant other's feelings, or just makes them uncomfortable, I don't care. It's fine. There are other ways to enjoy bikes, other brands. There are other juices to enjoy. But with pot, it seems like people are unwilling to compromise. And a lot of people are willing to lie about it for the sake of continuing to use pot. in a relationship I was in before, one of the first meaningful relationships in my life, I asked this girl not to smoke pot because it made her different than how I preferred. I liked her personality exactly the way it was. I didn't want her to be chill or whatever. I just wanted her to be in her natural state. I would have felt the same way about head meds, bipolar medication, or whatever you want to call it, especially when she didn't have any disorder, but was diagnosed with one. At least from my perspective, she didn't have a disorder. Of course, that was probably an uneducated perspective, but I still felt a life without drugs, a life where you're trying to deal with your issues head on without any chemical influence. If it's possible, you should do it, because otherwise you're just doing drugs the rest of your life. Anyway, so we break up with these individuals, not so much because they did pot, but because they would lie to us about it, and because they would show that they clearly prioritize pot more than us. Now, if someone tells me not to ride that certain brand of bike, or they tell me not to drink that certain juice, and they say that they'll break up with me if I do, I don't have to understand why, and they could explain themselves, which would be great. But if they just say it really hurts my feelings, or makes me uncomfortable, or whatever, fine. I love you. I'm gonna stop riding that goddamn bike brand, or stop drinking that certain kind of juice, because it's not so important to me that I'm gonna destroy a relationship. And yes, you are also risking destroying a relationship by saying you're gonna break up with me if I use these things. But at the same time, you may have very good reasons, and it's not even that important to me. So I'm not gonna throw down over it. I'm not gonna make a big issue over it. It's not like you're asking me to stop driving cars to get to work, that I have to walk from now on. It's not like you're significantly impeding my normal daily functions.
Warhead deployment beginning. Prepare for collection.
But people would repeatedly prioritize both my wife and I after they prioritized pot. They would go get high, and then they would act like it never happened. And maybe some cases people tell the truth eventually.
Are now ready for collection.
But the point is that they initially prioritized a substance over human beings. And this isn't a relationship that I would consider to be productive, that I would consider to be beneficial for either person. Not in the realm of honesty or in the realm of people being their true selves. Relationships shouldn't necessarily be about one person telling another person what they can and can't do. It should be about that person automatically doing what comes naturally to them, and the other person being okay with it because they're truly compatible. Now, this is an idealistic perspective to have regarding relationships, but some people would consider that a healthy perspective to have, considering it implies that you're more compatible with each other without having to change each other. Now, I have my problems, my wife has her problems, but those are issues that we can work on.
You have eliminated
A drug addiction, and when I say addiction, I mean something that you are willing to destroy your relationship over. That is something that should not happen. You should be in a relationship with somebody who does drugs like you do. You should be in a relationship with someone who's okay with that behavior. Criminals, if it's a crime to do whatever drug you're doing, should be with other criminals. And people who do not commit crimes should be with people who do not commit crimes. Why? Because we deserve who we are. We deserve to be with people like ourselves. And yes, sometimes you can be attracted to someone so much, or you could bond with someone so much that you want to make it work out regardless. But you're setting yourself up for failure, considering the fact that you have this conflict that seems to be irreparable. They are completely intolerant of something that you prioritize, a drug, over people. So they're essentially intolerant of who you are. So what I'm saying in this video is not that pot is absolutely horrible and everyone who does pot are terrible people. A lot of my family members who I love smoke pot, and it's legal in my state, so they're not criminals. What I'm saying in this video is that if you're with somebody who smokes pot, despite you asking them not to smoke pot, you probably deserve to be with somebody who's willing to love you more than a drug.
Nearing completion.
And to that pot smoker, you should probably be with somebody who loves to smoke drugs like you do. Because that way you can go on smoking pot the rest of your life, blowing money on drugs,
You may launch when
without
ready.
anyone telling you not to do what you're obviously addicted to doing.
Warheads available for collection.
And again, I say you're addicted because with all of my experience, I've seen person after person after person swear up and down that they don't want to do pot, or that they won't do pot, and yet those people just keep going back again and again, smoking pot. They say, I can quit anytime, and then they wind up smoking it again. Actions speak louder than words. It is my firm position that pot is addictive, just like porn is addictive. Something that you say you can quit or will quit, but wind up doing again and again, is probably something you're addicted to. And a lot of people watching this video are nodding their heads, agreeing with me, because they have met individuals just like the people I'm describing, who say they're going to quit, they say it's not addictive, and then they go on using it anyway. They say they're not going to do it behind your back, and they lie to your face in the process, and they wind up smoking pot. So it's, again, not my position that pot smokers are all terrible people. They're not. Many pot smokers are awesome people. But it is my position that people who do not smoke pot, who have a problem with people who smoke pot,